Okay, so to begin the sports package. Now, what's cool about this and all the other broadcast packages we're going to create in this course is that a lot of it is just very simple. You know, it's a lot of the real power that comes from these intros is the lighting, the textures, and the movement, which we're going to get to in a little bit. So the way this course is going to be structured is that we're going to model, texture, animate each package one at a time, rather than doing all of our modeling together, then all of our animating. So each package can stand on its own. So you can do one right now and finish it up, and then render it out and kind of make the modifications for your own particular needs, and then come back and do the news, and then do the feature film, or jump around as needed. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do, we're here in Lightwave 9.5 Modeler, and you can see that I'm on a Mac. I'm on my G5. It's about 3 years old. Not quite sure what video card's in here. I think it's an ATI card, 256 meg card probably. So, not the greatest computer in the world, but it's working just fine. You'll see that 9.5 performs pretty well. This is not a 9.5 course per se, as far as what's new. We're just using 9.5 because it is the most current version. Soon we will have a What's New in 9.5 course that you can get from 3D Garage. But for right now, you could probably get away with everything we're going to do in Lightwave 9, 9.2, or 9.3. I can't think of anything offhand that's going to come up that needs 9.5. So with that said, let's get to our model. And initially, I want you to make sure that you're working with a default setup here. Now, I'm going to assume you're pretty comfortable with Lightwave. I'm not going to assume you're an expert. So we're going to kind of work in between there. So for those of you that are really familiar with the program, sorry for some of the repeated keystrokes and settings. For those of you that are pretty new, you should be able to keep up just fine. So what I did here is I pressed D for Dan on the keyboard to call up my display options. And everything is default. So I've got my guides on, my normals, my grid, my point selections, polygon selections. Under GL, my texture resolution is about 256, which is default. That's fine. If you've got a big Mongo video card, go ahead, set that up there if you want. But this has nothing to do with your render. It's only a display property. So I can leave it there just fine. And we're not going to do a lot of texturing in Modeler, and that's just my preference. We're going to do all that in Layout, and you'll see why when we get to it. So everything here is pretty much on its own. If you got an older video card, maybe put that Legacy on. But okay, my viewports I'm leaving to this default quad view. If we need a large view, we'll get to it as needed. But right now we're going to work in a quad view. And our backdrops, we're not doing any images right now. Interface, alert levels high. I'm going to leave that on because essentially that will give me a little warning or an error if there's any issues, or I click the wrong button or something, which is good for you to see as well. If you're really good, you can set that alert level low, and a little message will come up down here at the bottom of the screen. And basically, instead of a pop-up window coming up that you have to click OK, the message comes up and you can just keep working and ignore it, which is very nice. All right, our units, probably the most important. I'm working with System International. I know a lot of people like English for feet and inches. Some people like metric for meters. We're going to use System International, which is default, which is basically metric without centimeters. Okay, that's pretty much the way I learn Lightwave, so that's why I kind of keep using it. It's a little harder for me to go to the English settings after 17 years of using Lightwave. Grid snap, I'm setting this to none. Okay, that can really screw you up. But at the same time, it might be good. If we need it, we'll turn it on. But essentially, let me turn that on real quick. Grid snap set to standard. And if let's say I'm drawing a box here, and then I choose my drag tool, which is Control T. See how that snaps? Okay, that can help you line things up when you're doing things like, well, lining up points of a box. However, I find that I have a little more flexibility with that off. So I'm just going to turn that off. Okay, so there's our initial default setups there. Just delete that. Okay. Across the top, just go over a quick few things. This is pretty much the same as your older versions of Lightwave. You've got your Create tab, your Modify tab, your Multiply tab, Construct, Detail, Map, which we're not really going to use, Setup we're not going to use for bones and stuff. Although, you might be using this in a future video from 3D Garage. Okay. Utilities, we're not going to go to LScripts at all. and different selection modes. Now, this is something newer in 9.5, so we're going to possibly use these as needed. Now, the thing is, I've got my screen shrunk down to 1280 by 720, and if I open it all the way up, now you can see that there's all kinds of new tools here. A lot of them were there before, but they're also pulled out, but some of them are new. And again, that's going to be all in our What's New in 9.5 videos. So I'm going to leave those. But yeah, that's why I see these more buttons, because my screen has been shrunken. So it might take me a minute to get to things, too, that I'm used to being expanded. Essentially, some of the ones I like are the select loop, which used to be up here, which it still is, but now there's a whole selection menu. And our view areas, which we're going to use pretty much keyboard commands, A for fitting, our period key for zooming in, and so on. Okay? Now, as far as reference for sizes, everything, when I tell people to build in Modeler, everything should be real-world scale as much as possible. Doesn't have to be. Doesn't make any difference on your render or your lighting or anything else. The reason I say to do that, though, is that if you were building something like, nice little tin can here or something like this, if you build that to scale and you save it, over time, you would develop a huge library. And if you take a look at my 3D content, I've got years of objects and models and stuff that I've worked on for different projects. Okay, so you can see there's just tons of stuff there. And if you have a project coming up and you think, I built a can, or I built a television, or I built a lamp, and all of those are built to scale, you'll always be able to load them up and use them without adjusting them. Certainly, if they're the wrong size, you can adjust them, but that might change your texturing and everything else. So the only thing you would probably ever do in Lightwave that's not to scale is what we're going to do today, which is logos and fonts and things, because in the real world, those don't exist. They don't really fly around. So spaceships, monsters, houses, televisions, picture frames, computer units, anything you would build is all based off of some real-world thing. So it would have a real-world scale. What we're going to do doesn't. So what I'm going to do is just draw out our beginning element here, which is going to be one of the main elements, sort of a pseudo-football field. Okay, I'm just going to click in the middle here and pull that aside because I want to be able to see the other edges of it. And I'm going to press N for numeric, and that's also right down here at the bottom of the screen, numeric. Okay. And what we can do is come over here to the radius, and we're just going to increase the radius on here. Okay. Doesn't look very good, does it? But let's just add a couple of segments there. Maybe like that. Okay, about 6 segments. So again, on these little tabs here, just click, hold the mouse, and drag. A lot of people click and then drag and nothing happens. And what we're doing here is basically rounding the corners, obviously. But a lot of people I know will just do a few segments. They'll kind of go like this and think it's okay. It's not okay. You got to bring those up, because if we want to use that, we want to get close to it. We want to be smooth and clean. We don't want any amateuristic looking edges here. Okay, so here you can see on the right the smoothness of that. And if you just do a simple one like that, you get these facets, okay? And there's really not any smoothing or anything you can put on. We don't want to turn it into a sub-patch to turn it into curves. We want to keep it just polygons. So with that, I'm going to increase it to maybe about 24. Nice and clean. Okay? So again, when you do that, once you turn off the tool, you accept those changes. When I turn it on, I got to make sure that I press N or click the numeric button and adjust that radius and those radius segments before I turn off the box tool. So it's a process that involves setting that while you're creating. Okay, you can't just create a box and go back and do it later. You can try beveling the points on the edges, but I find that this works actually a little bit better. Okay, the old way we used to do it was to take a disk like this, and then we'd Shift A to fit that. We'd kill the polygons by pressing K. We would take points like this. I'm using the right mouse button to select those points, and I'm working in point mode. Press Delete. Shift V for mirror, and then I'd mirror those over. And then we'd mirror them again, and then we'd select the points like this, and press P and make a polygon. Well, I think 9 or 8 introduced that radius in the box tool, which is really, really nice. All right, so now we're going to do an F2 to center. Okay, just press F2 on your keyboard. If you press F2 and you get, if you're on a Mac and you get your function keys, or certain PCs have function keys, there should be a function or another control that you can hold down. So on a Mac, it's the FN key if you haven't switched your keyboards over. Okay, so this is our initial football field. Doesn't seem like much, does it? But what we're going to do is just add a few more elements to it. Some X's and O's, a couple of lines to create the yardage, and we will thicken it, and I'll do that right now. I'm going to thicken it just a bit. So I'm going to go to multiply, then to extrude. I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and holding the control key, I'm going to click and drag up. And the control key just constrains that just a little bit. Okay. That's all I need, just a little thickness there. Now, I can tell you one thing that I'm looking at, and it looks like this is flipped inside out. Can you see that lip over there? There, see it right there? All right. My polygons are flipped inside out because of the way I extruded. So just press F for flip, and you actually flip those polygons the right way. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Yeah, there we go. You can see the edge of that. Okay, so let's go ahead and put our yardage in and press the A key to fit. And first thing we're going to do is press save. And I have a desktop, Sara Lee. No, Sara Lee was my project today. This is the wrong thing. Broadcast, there we go. Projects in your objects folder. We're going to call this football field. IE or EI? I don't know. Save. All right, let's move on to the next video.